In a Minecraft social experiment, I found a way to simulate civilization in Minecraft like it's never been done before. With 100 players, custom biomes, and a custom map with 2 themed islands, where players will be separated into opposing teams and tasked with building a civilization. Each island has its own advantages and disadvantages. Each team has to elect a leader to guide them so they don't plunge immediately into anarchy. Also, this server is in hardcore, so when a player dies, they're done forever. Will these players create a functioning society, or will they turn to fighting and war? I present to you... If you want to be a part of future videos like this, then just join the Discord in the description and you can sign up for future events. On day 1, our story starts with the End Team. With enormous forests, naturally generating fields of crops, and a huge sky base towering above a desert, this nation was the one to be a part of. This naturally gave the End Team an advantage because they already had all the resources they could ever need, including coal, iron, and diamonds just below their feet. The End Nation began the event by quickly spreading out to gather materials, including wood, stone, and some basic armor and tools. The End Team knew they had a capital somewhere, but they didn't know what it looked like or where it was located. You guys realize there's an end structure somewhere on this island, right? You should probably be trying to find that.
Yeah.
Meanwhile, the Nether team was making similar progress, although they were much less coordinated than the End. But despite this, they started out the same way Team End did, and they went for basic materials at the beginning. Team Nether also had a capital, but their land was mostly barren rainforests with surprisingly little wildlife and a limited amount of edible resources. Upon realizing this, Team Nether decided to set up camp and explore the rest of their region. Back at the End Team's island, progress was being made. Despite the event having started only minutes before, the End Team had already organized a VC and was searching for the capital. Also, you guys know, Gotobia is really close to finding something. They found it. Now that a single End player had found the capital, word spread quickly and the entire team would soon know of the location. As for the capital itself, it was a giant replica of the End Island with some modifications that made it even cooler and more overpowered for the End Team. As Team End started to arrive at their newly discovered skybase, it became clear there would be no equal distribution of loot from the End Island, as players began looting the chests and the pillars and leaving nothing behind. Players from the End Team began going off on their own missions, including players like Vitality and Rasplin, who both decided to go off on their own mining trips. The situation at the Nether Island was not much different, with Team Nether realizing that the End had an advantage of sorts. They decided to grind for gear as best they could. Most of the Nether team was able to get decent items, but some were left defenseless and weaponless simply because there was so little supply and so much demand for items. Team Nether began realizing that they needed to organize themselves much better.
Can anybody guess why Vitality just called me? Like, because I don't know how else we're gonna get food.
But because it was so hard to manage a team of 50 players, members of Team Nether began wandering off into the rainforest, and a few actually ended up stumbling upon the capital. The Nether capital was a massive collection of the Nether's most well-known biomes, containing items necessary for crafting potions, creating infinite food sources, and loads of armor and weapons. The few Nether players who arrived at the capital quickly revealed their treacherous plans. After searching the capital for anything of value, the players who found the base grabbed whatever they could and took it for themselves, leaving their team at an even further disadvantage. These players' actions later proved to have huge consequences, as the items they had stolen for themselves were the only way for the Nether Nation to create potions. While the rest of Team Nether was still trying to locate the now looted capital of their island, Team End was starting to realize that they had an issue. Without someone to guide them, they would never manage to work together and become a successful civilization. Once they realized that they would soon fall to anarchy without electing a leader, they held a meeting in a voice chat and had everybody who could come to the capital do so. Once they had everything arranged, Team End decided to hold elections and give each player a chance to give a speech on why they should be the leader of the End Nation.
Since I'm the best PvPer, I would wash everyone in PvP because you're all dog water.
Why I would like to be leader is because I'm African American. Yeah.
Simply put, if you want to win, if you want to be the best nation, you elect me. If you want to lose, go somewhere else.
I'm voting Andy.
Because both of the teams were focused on building their own nations and gathering resources, they were blind to the third nation that had slowly started to form, the Volcano Nation. See, there was a small island in the southern area of the map that was meant for executions of criminals during the event, but a few players from both teams had ventured out and discovered the Volcano Island. Now, they had formed a friendship and alliance despite the fact that they were on opposing teams. While the other two teams were busy with their own issues, the Volcano Nation was focusing on creating farms and gathering basic materials, as they had decided to be a peaceful group and avoid war with other nations. As the teams were beginning to get comfortable on their new islands, day 1 was coming to an end. As night was closing in and players began to retreat, Team End had finally decided on a leader, Penk. Penk received the max diamond armor promised to leaders and became the first leader of this event. And with that, day 1 ended with Team Nether still leaderless and at a massive disadvantage. On day 2, things started looking up for the Nether team. Almost immediately after the second day started, the first kill happened on the server, and it was a team kill within the End team. As many people on the End Island were continuing to get better gear after spending most of the first day on a leader election, Rasplin and his friends made quick work of a few stragglers from their own team who were mining in a cave. But since this occurred so far away from the rest of the team, nobody found out and Rasplin was able to flee the scene and carry out the rest of his plan. Rasplin began heading towards the ocean that separated the Nether and End Islands and began to cross it, heading into Team Nether's territory so he could try to continue his killing spree without being noticed. While this was going on, another issue had arisen with another creator on the server. Vitality from Team End had been tricked into following a player from Team Nether across the ocean and into Nether territory, and was being held hostage at the main Nether base. Team Nether wanted to either kill Vitality or recruit him to join their team, so Vitality chose the obvious option and said he would join the team. Vitality said he would join Team Nether, but as soon as he was left alone, he made a break for it and he managed to escape his captors by hiding underground, so he left the Nether and rejoined his team back at the End Island as soon as possible. Unaware of these things going on, most of Team Nether and all of Team End were still trying to make progress with their civilizations. Team End began assembling a military, a group of full diamond, with enchants who would be sent out to carry any acts of war decided by Penk. By this point, the Volcano Nation had revealed themselves to the public, so the Nether and End teams knew where they were located, and the natural instinct of the End team was to try and invade the Volcano Nation. As the End Nation began preparing their military for war, the news got out that Rasplin had killed members of his own team, causing all military efforts from the End team to be shifted towards killing Rasplin. Once found, Rasplin was led into an ocean chase with the entire End military in pursuit. Guys, this is not Volcano Island, guys. The End Nation thought Rasplin was going to lead them straight to the Volcano Island, but after realizing it was the Nether Island rather than the Volcano Island that they had been led to, their priorities shifted from imperialism to total world domination. The End military drove Rasplin onto land, and he put up a good fight, but he was eventually ended after being overwhelmed by over 10 full diamond players, eliminating him from the event forever. Now that the entire military for Team End was on the Nether Island, they figured that the only logical thing would be to invade the Nether and murder the innocent civilians. The End military split off into groups and picked off the weak and unprepared Nether members one by one, their initial goal of dominating the Volcano Island forgotten. The End's forces eventually made it to the Nether capital, where they destroyed and killed everything in their path. Few Nether members remained after these attacks, and many of those who remained either hid by themselves or went to live with the Volcano Nation. With most of Day 2 being used for fighting and conquest, it was nearing time for Day 2 to end. With the Volcano Nation completely unharmed, but the Nether Nation mostly obliterated, Day 2 came to an end. Day 3 was promised to be the most deadly and chaotic day in the entire event. Just as players were beginning where they left off on Day 2, an announcement was made that a custom natural disaster was coming, in the form of a world border. It would take approximately 2 hours, but by the end of Day 3, there would be a small world border encasing the remaining players. The design for this natural disaster was influenced by the players' chaotic and violent acts in the first few days, and there were 2 main possible outcomes for the disaster. The remaining players could form a truce and continue living and simulating civilization, or they could treat it as a Hunger Games and try to be the last one remaining. As the world border was created and it slowly began closing in, the Volcano Nation realized that they had a huge problem. Their main base, the Volcano Island, was located right next to the edge of the world border, so they would be forced to flee the island and head to one of the 2 main islands. Team End began to take advantage of this natural disaster, coming together in a meeting of the strongest players and splitting up to eliminate as much of the other nations as possible. Lone players were picked off one by one, whether they were minding their own business or not. The End's military was being extremely ruthless, even killing players from their own team if they were less geared. Player counts were beginning to drop rapidly, and this was beginning to seem like complete anarchy. Penk had almost no power at this point, and it began to seem like it was an every man for themselves type of situation. Players began to plan how they would survive the final world border, and those who were less geared either died or found places to hide. After over an hour of the End's ex-military hunting and killing innocent players, the world border was finally reaching its final position. By this point, any strand of society was completely lost as players struggled to stay alive in the anarchy that had been caused by the difference in power between the End and Nether nations. Any possibility of the nations coming together to live peacefully was slowly being lost, and the remaining players completely forgot the goal of the event to form a successful civilization. As the world border slowly stopped at its final position, the player count was dropping at rapid rates, and players were sucked into a vicious fight, just trying to be the last one alive. Players were being picked off one by one, and they didn't seem to realize that they still had time to end this conflict and restart civilization with the remaining players. But this chance was becoming smaller and smaller with every death, until there were only a few players left, Vitality and Gorilla. These two were the final hope for civilization to continue and for society to be remade. But the two began fighting with no hesitation. Because of this, the natural disaster began moving into its second phase, and the ground under the two remaining players' feet became lava. Because of the insane gear acquired by these two players from the killing of the 98 other players in the event, they had an extremely hard time killing each other and fought neck and neck until almost 10 minutes after the 1v1 started, when Gorilla finally knocked Vitality into the lava. Vitality recovered quickly, but the fall into the lava drained his health and he was quickly picked off by Gorilla, making Gorilla the last remaining player in the event. But was that really a good thing? Was there really any point of being the last remaining player in a society meant for 100 players? Although there was a clear winner of the event, it really can't be determined whether Team Nether, Team End, or even the Volcano Nation was the most successful nation. All of them had their flaws, but Team End had been the most vicious nation, directly causing the downfall of all the others. And because of this, I'd say this event served its purpose to represent human civilizations in Minecraft.